My fiancé told me, send your kids to boarding school or the wedding's off. So I canceled everything and watched her world fall apart. I'm a 38-year-old single dad with 2 kids, ages 10 and 12. Their mom passed away a few years back, and since then, it's been just the 3 of us. Life hasn't been perfect, but we've done our best to hold things together. My kids are amazing, kind, smart, and resilient. They've been my reason to keep going. About a year and a half ago, I met someone. We'll call her Sarah. She was 34, and we met through mutual friends at a backyard barbecue. At first, she was everything I thought I'd been waiting for. Outgoing, charming, magnetic. She had that spark that made everyone feel at ease. We hit it off quickly, and, not long after, we started dating. To her credit, Sarah tried early on to bond with my kids. She'd take them out for ice cream or to the park and always made an effort to connect. My kids were polite, but I could tell they were cautious, like they were keeping their distance emotionally. Maybe it was just the trauma they'd already been through. I figured it was normal. These things take time. Early in the relationship, things felt promising. Sarah seemed to understand that my kids came first, that we were a package deal. She complimented my parenting and said she admired the bond I had with them. It was comforting to think someone finally got it. As we got more serious, she started staying over sometimes. The kids didn't seem thrilled, but they weren't opposed either. I thought we were slowly figuring out how to make it all work. But looking back, I missed a few warning signs. Sarah began making little comments about the house. She'd say things like, "It's cozy, but maybe it could use a modern touch." Or "The kids' rooms are cute, wouldn't it be fun to give them a little makeover?" At the time, I thought she was just excited to make the space feel more like ours. I didn't read too much into it. She also talked a lot about our future, traveling, building a life together, maybe even having a child of our own. I wasn't opposed to that, in theory, but I always made it clear my kids were my top priority. She'd smile and nod, but now, I wonder if she ever really understood that. Her brother Jake came up every now and then in conversation. From what I gathered, he was going through a rough time, lost his job, living with their parents, couldn't seem to get it together. Sarah spoke of him like he was both a burden and a responsibility. I didn't judge. Every family has their issues, but the way she talked about him made it clear he was deeply dependent on others. Despite the red flags, things between us continued to grow. After being on my own for so long, I started to believe maybe I'd found someone to build a life with. A year into the relationship, I began seriously thinking about proposing. Sarah had been hinting for months, showing me ring styles, talking about weddings, dropping little comments. I wasn't oblivious. Honestly, I thought it was time. The kids were doing well, our life had some stability, and I felt ready. I planned a simple proposal in the park where we had our first real date. No crowd, no big gestures, just something genuine and heartfelt. I told her how much she meant to me, pulled out the ring, and asked her to marry me. She said yes. She was thrilled, already dreaming out loud about color schemes and venues. For a brief moment, it all felt perfect. But that feeling didn't last. In the weeks after the proposal, wedding planning took over. Sarah threw herself into it, flipping through Pinterest boards, contacting venues, obsessing over every detail. I was working, parenting, managing our life. I let her take the lead on wedding stuff. She seemed so happy. Then, little things started creeping in, subtle but unsettling. She made comments about how the house needed a woman's touch, or how she wanted our future to be more polished. I didn't really know what she meant by polished, but I let it go. Next came suggestions like how we could declutter the kids' rooms or store some of their stuff in the garage to open up the space. It felt like she was slowly trying to erase the home we'd built. I wanted to believe she was just nesting, trying to contribute. But deep down, it bothered me. One weekend, she came over with a furniture catalog and started talking about upgrading the living room. I didn't see what needed fixing. The couch worked fine, the coffee table was solid, and the kids' beanbags weren't going anywhere. She said she wanted it to feel more adult. I bit my tongue. This was a family home, not a showroom. Things escalated when she suggested turning the spare room, which doubled as my workspace, and the kids' art area, into a guest room. She called it a compromise because the kids could still use it sometimes. That room meant something to us. It wasn't just space, it was part of our life. I told her it wasn't happening. She didn't argue, but the tension was obvious. She muttered something about making space for everyone eventually, and I let it drop. Around then, Jake started coming up more often. Sarah mentioned how hard it was to see him struggle. I kept quiet. Jake wasn't my problem. I had enough on my plate. Then one day, Sarah asked if Jake could come over for dinner. She said he wanted to meet me and the kids, since we were all becoming family. I agreed. Honestly, I was curious. The dinner was a disaster. Jake showed up late, smelled like bad decisions, and spent most of the night complaining about how life had dealt him a bad hand. He barely acknowledged the kids and only really talked to Sarah. I tried to make small talk. It went nowhere. After he left, Sarah went on about how nice the dinner was. I had no idea what evening she experienced, but it wasn't the one I just lived through. I mentioned that Jake seemed like he was struggling. She got defensive immediately, said he just needed support and that people were too quick to judge. I let it go, but the way she snapped back didn't sit right with me. Then she started bringing him up more, constantly. She said her parents were pressuring her to help Jake, and she felt torn between her family and the life we were building. I could tell she was angling for something, but I wasn't about to entertain it. That's when the suggestions turned into flat-out requests. She floated the idea of Jake moving in with us just temporarily after the wedding. I told her straight up I wasn't comfortable with that, but she wouldn't drop it. It would just be for a little while, she insisted. He'll stay out of the way. I asked where exactly she expected him to stay, and she casually mentioned the spare room, the one my kids use for homework and crafts. I reminded her that it was their space, and she brushed it off like it didn't matter. That conversation ended there, but the bad taste it left didn't go away. Around the same time, I noticed her behavior toward my kids started to shift. At first it was just questions, asking about their routines, their school schedules. Seemed harmless. But then came the comments. Stuff like, they could really benefit from more structure, or maybe they'd thrive in a new environment. Then, one day, my son asked me what a boarding school was. I froze. I asked where he'd heard about that, and he said Sarah brought it up. That was it. That was the moment the alarms in my head went off like a 5-alarm fire. I confronted her. She laughed it off. Said she'd just been talking about the benefits of boarding schools, how they had great programs, and it was just a fun conversation. I wasn't buying it. I told her point blank, don't put ideas in my kids' heads like that. She got defensive. Said she was only trying to help, but by now, it was clear she wasn't trying to blend into our life. She was trying to bend it around her own vision. What I thought was us building something together was really her, slowly trying to push out everything that didn't fit her ideal version of a future. And I was starting to realize that I wasn't just blending a family, I was being steamrolled. After our argument about the boarding school, I convinced myself we'd cleared the air, that maybe it had been one big misunderstanding. I told myself she was just awkward around the kids, trying to connect in her own weird way. I still wanted to believe we were working toward the same future. But then everything came crashing down in one evening. The kids were upstairs doing homework. I'd just sat down on the couch, hoping to unwind after a long day, when Sarah walked in with a look I recognized, determined and dead serious. She sat down across from me. We need to talk. I sighed. Okay, what's going on? She hesitated, which was rare for her. Then she said, I've been thinking about how we're going to make everything work after the wedding. All right, I said, already bracing for what was coming. It's about the house, she said. I just don't think it's going to work the way it is, not with all of us living here. I frowned. What are you talking about? We're fine the way things are. She shook her head like I was missing something obvious. No, we're not. This house is too small. If we want to live comfortably, we need to make some changes. I felt my patience thinning. Sarah, the kids have their rooms. I've got my office/spare room. It's not perfect, but it works. What changes are you even talking about? Then she said it. I think we should consider sending the kids to boarding school. I stared at her, stunned. I could barely process it. Boarding school? I asked slowly. Are you serious? Yes, she said without flinching. I've looked into it. There are amazing programs out there. Top-tier education, new friends, independence. It could be a great opportunity for them. I narrowed my eyes. Is that really the reason you're bringing this up? Because it sounds a lot more like this is about something else. She paused, then said, fine. If the kids were away, it would free up space. Jake could move in and have a proper room. He needs stability. This is the best way to make that happen. And there it was, the real reason. You want me to send my kids away so your unemployed, alcoholic brother can have a room in their house, I said, trying to keep my voice from exploding. Are you even listening to yourself? She sighed like I was the one being unreasonable. Jake's in a rough place. He needs help. This would give him a fresh start. It's not just about him. It's about our future. I shook my head. No. What's best for my kids is staying here in their home, with their routines, their friends, and their dad, not being shipped off so your brother can move in. Her face hardened. You're being so narrow-minded, she snapped. You won't even consider how boarding school might benefit them. It's not like I'm suggesting something bad. I don't need a fresh start, I said, standing my ground. My kids need stability. That's what they've barely had since their mom died. I'm not about to take even that from them because your brother refuses to grow up. Her expression twisted with frustration. Why are you being so difficult? Jake is family. Families support each other. Jake is your family, I said. My family is upstairs, doing homework in the only home they've known since losing their mom, and you don't get to decide their lives are less important than your brother's comfort. That hit her. Her tone turned sharp. You act like I'm trying to hurt them. I'm not. I just want a life where everyone has room to breathe. This isn't about space, I snapped. This is about you trying to erase my kids from the picture, and it's not happening. She stood, arms crossed, her voice shaking. If you won't even consider it, maybe we need to rethink everything. I stood up too. What's that supposed to mean? It means, she said coldly, if you can't prioritize my family for once, maybe this isn't going to work. I'm not marrying someone who doesn't respect my family. I stared at her in disbelief. You want to talk about respect? What about respecting my kids? My family? Her eyes didn't waver. This is your choice, she said. Me or them, your call. But I won't settle for less. And just like that, she walked out. I stood there, stunned, reeling. I knew things had been off. But this was something else entirely. For the first time since I proposed, I wondered if I had made a massive mistake. Then came the final straw. Tension around Jake had been building for weeks. Every time Sarah brought him up, it felt like we were walking a tightrope. Then one Saturday morning, he crossed a line I couldn't ignore. He showed up unannounced. The sheer nerve left me speechless. How could someone be so entitled, so disconnected from reality, that they'd just barge into someone's life expecting to be taken in? Jake didn't just reek of bad decisions, he reeked of shamelessness. And this time, I was done. I hesitated, dreading who it might be. I ignored it at first. Called out to the kids, figuring it was just a package delivery, or maybe someone selling something. But the knocking didn't stop. When I finally opened the door, there stood Jake's smug grin, same unbothered, overconfident energy, like he was dropping by a buddy's place to hang out, not barging into a life he had no right to be part of. Hey man, he said with a nod. Figured I'd swing by. Got a minute? I blinked, trying to process why he was standing there. Sarah didn't mention you were coming, I said flatly. Jake shrugged. Didn't think I needed an invite. She said you guys were still working out the details about me moving in, so I figured I'd stop by. You know, get a feel for the place. The audacity of this guy was unreal. I think there's been a misunderstanding, I said, trying to keep my voice level. We haven't agreed to anything about you moving in. Jake laughed like I'd just told him the funniest joke of the year. Come on, man, Sarah said. It's basically a done deal. Just ironing out the logistics, right? Before I could even respond, he stepped inside like he owned the place, walked right into the living room. My youngest looked up from the cartoons, confused. My oldest gave me a look, the kind of look that said, "What is happening?" I felt it too. Nice setup, Jake said, glancing around like he was on a home tour. He flopped down onto the couch and stretched out like he belonged there. I clenched my fists. Jake, this isn't a good time. You should have called before coming over. Before he could respond, the front door opened again. Sarah walked in. She froze for a split second when she saw Jake, then forced a cheerful smile. Oh, Jake, I didn't expect you this early. Early. I turned to her. I didn't know he was coming at all. She waved it off like it was no big deal. I must have forgotten to mention it. No harm done, right? I looked at the kids and nodded toward the stairs. Go on up, guys. Once they were out of earshot, I turned to Sarah and Jake. What's going on? I asked, my voice tight. Jake just told me he's here to check out the house because you've been talking about him moving in. Her smile faltered, but she bounced back fast. Babe, she said, stepping toward me, I was just trying to help. Jake's in a tough spot, and I thought, if he could just see how we might make it work, maybe you'd be more open to the idea. We've already talked about this, I said, barely holding on to my patience. I told you I'm not okay with it. Jake, still stretched across the couch, chimed in. Relax, man. I'm not asking for much. Just a bed and a little space to breathe. You won't even notice I'm here. I turned to him, voice cold. This isn't your decision to make, and it's not happening. Jake scoffed, stood up, slowly. All right, no need to get worked up. I'll leave you two to sort it out. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the door, mumbling under his breath. The second the door closed behind him, I turned to Sarah. What the hell was that? What do you mean? She snapped. Jake's my family. He needs help, and I'm trying to find a solution. You're the one making this harder than it needs to be. I'm making it harder, I said, my voice rising. You've been going behind my back, making decisions about my house, my kids, and my family. How is that okay? She folded her arms and glared. You're being impossible. Jake is family. Families help each other. Why can't you see that? Because this isn't just about Jake, I said. This is about you. Trying to push my kids out of their home to make room for him. They've already lost their mom. I'm not uprooting their lives just to make things easier for you or your brother. She shook her head, frustrated. You're so stubborn. Do you even care how hard this has been for me? I'm trying to build a future with you, and you're too busy clinging to your perfect little setup to see it. This perfect little setup is my kid's life, I snapped. And I won't apologize for protecting it. If you can't understand that, maybe you're not ready to be part of this family. Her face turned to stone. I knew what was coming before she even said it. Fine, she said coldly. If you're not willing to compromise, maybe we need to rethink this whole thing. I stood silent for a second, letting it sink in. Then I took a deep breath and met her eyes. You're right, I said. We do need to rethink this. And I've made my decision. Her face flickered, shock, then anger. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm choosing my kids, I said firmly. They come first. Always. If you can't accept that, then we don't have a future together. The silence that followed was deafening. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. Is that it then? She whispered, voice trembling. Yeah, I said, that's it. And I walked away. That day, walking away from Sarah, I felt everything. Relief, sadness, a strange stillness in my chest. It wasn't just the end of an argument. It was the end of everything we'd been trying to build. And even though I knew the breakup was inevitable, it still hurt. Sarah didn't take it well. The first couple of days after I ended things, she was quiet, distant. Came by to grab a few of her things and barely made eye contact. I thought maybe she was processing. Maybe she'd go quietly. But then the storm rolled in. It started with a phone call. So I assume you're canceling everything? She asked, voice cold and clipped. Yes, I said simply. There's no reason to keep the plans going. Good, she replied. Then we need to talk about the money. I frowned. What money? The caterer, she snapped. I already put down a deposit, and I expect you to reimburse me, since you're the one calling it off. That's only fair. I paused, realizing the demands weren't going to stop. Not even now. Sarah, I said, I already paid for the venue deposit. That alone was more than what you spent on the caterer. That's not the point, she said sharply. You ended it. You should take responsibility for the fallout. I took a breath. I'm not reimbursing you for anything. We both contributed to this wedding. We both knew deposits were not. You made your choices. I made mine. This is on both of us. She didn't like that. So you're just going to leave me out hundreds of dollars. I'm already out thousands, I said. Venue, flowers, invitations. I paid for all of that. I'm not covering more just because you're trying to shift blame. She hung up on me, but the messages kept coming. Texts, emails, voicemails, all demanding money. At one point, she even threatened to take me to small claims court. But it wasn't really about the money. Not for her. Sarah wasn't content to end things quietly. She started spreading her version of the breakup, painting me as the villain who abandoned her and turned my back on her struggling brother. Calls started coming in. Friends, family, even people I hadn't spoken to in years. One distant cousin, someone I'd met exactly once, had the nerve to scold me about family values. "Jake's going through a rough time," she said. "You could have made a small sacrifice to help. It's not like you'd be homeless." I bit my tongue. No point arguing with someone who only knew Sarah's side. No one seemed to care about my kids, about the life we'd built, or how her plans would have turned it upside down. All they heard was her version, where I was the heartless guy who refused to help. Thankfully, I had my people. The ones who knew the full story. The ones who saw through it. "You did the right thing," a close friend told me. "You stood up for your kids. You didn't fold." And for the first time in a long time, I believed that too. Anyone who tries to push your kids out of their home doesn't deserve to be part of your life. That line stuck with me, especially during the aftermath. The fallout wasn't just emotional, it was a logistical nightmare. Canceling the wedding meant contacting vendors, explaining the situation without diving into personal drama, and trying to gracefully undo an event people had already penciled into their calendars. Most were supportive. A few wanted the juicy details. I kept it vague, said it was a mutual decision, that we'd realized we weren't on the same page about the future. My kids didn't know the full story, but they could feel the shift. One night, my oldest asked, "Are we not getting a stepmom anymore?" I smiled softly. "No, we're not, but that's okay. We're still a family, and that's never going to change." They seemed relieved, and that told me everything I needed to know. The thought of them being shipped off to a boarding school while Jake, Sarah's freeloading brother, took over their rooms still made my blood boil. Sarah never understood how seriously I took my role as a father. That was her biggest mistake. The final straw came about a week later. Sarah showed up unannounced to collect more of her things. She walked in like she still had a stake in the place, scanning the rooms as if checking for signs she'd ever lived there. She didn't say much at first, just packed in silence while I stayed in the kitchen. But on her way out, she paused in the doorway. Her voice was icy. "You'll regret this. You had a chance to build something better, and you threw it away." I met her eyes, calm and steady. "No, Sarah, I didn't throw anything away. I protected what mattered most, my kids and their home. If you can't understand that, then this never had a future." Her expression cracked for a moment, like she wanted to argue but didn't have the words. She scoffed, muttered something under her breath, and walked out for the last time. The house feels quieter now, and honestly, that's a good thing. This wasn't the future I imagined when I proposed to Sarah, but maybe it's the one I needed. My kids are safe, their home is still theirs, and the chaos, gone. I've been reflecting a lot, wondering if I missed the red flags sooner than I should have. Maybe, maybe not, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Reddit, I'll post again if anything else happens. Final update. Hey again. I thought breaking up and canceling the wedding would be the end of the drama. I couldn't have been more wrong. Turns out, walking away from Sarah wasn't just about protecting my kids, it also meant dealing with a mess I never saw coming. First, Sarah started spreading lies. She told mutual friends, and even some of my own family, that I'd been emotionally abusive and controlling, that she was the one left devastated. Suddenly, my phone was blowing up with calls and texts. Some people wanted to hear my side. Others flat out accused me of pushing her to a breaking point. One mutual friend, let's call him Dave actually, called and said, "Hey man, I heard you made Sarah's life hell. What's going on?" I took a breath and said, "Dave, do you really think I'd do that? She wanted me to send my kids to boarding school so her brother could move in. That's what really happened." To his credit, Dave listened. He backed off, but not everyone was so rational. Sarah had always been good at playing the victim, and Jake, he wasn't any better. A week after the breakup, he texted me out of the blue, "You're a spineless coward for not helping your family. I might swing by to get what's mine. Better hope I don't have to force it." I was stunned, not just by the audacity, but by the entitlement. I hadn't taken anything from him. I simply refused to let him bulldoze into my home. Still, that message felt like a threat. So, the next day, I called a locksmith and had every lock changed. For a while, I braced myself, waiting for Jake to show up, make a scene, pound on the door, but nothing happened. And then I found out why. A mutual friend told me Jake had been caught stealing from Sarah. During one of his drunken episodes, he somehow accessed her bank account and drained it. Thousands gone. I wasn't surprised. Jake had always been a leech. Always someone else's problem. But this time, he went too far. He disappeared afterward. No one could reach him. No one had seen him. Sarah, meanwhile, was left scrambling, trying to figure out how to pay her bills, cover her debts, and clean up the disaster her brother left behind. And just when I thought the drama was over, she showed up at my door. No call, no text, just there, on my porch, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Before I could say anything, she spoke. "I need your help," she said, voice trembling. "Jake stole everything. I don't know what to do." I stood there, silent for a beat, letting the weight of everything she'd done wash over me. I remembered the lies, the manipulation, the way she put Jake above my children, and whatever sympathy I had disappeared. "Sarah," I said, calm but firm, "this isn't my problem. You made your choice. You wanted Jake to move in here. You put him above my kids, above everything. Now, you're dealing with the fallout." Her face shifted from pleading to furious. "How can you be so heartless?" she snapped. "I thought you cared about me." "I did," I said. "But then you showed me who you really are. You chose your brother's comfort over my kids' stability. I'm not cleaning up that mess." She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "You need to leave. I'm done with this." She stood there, stunned, then turned and walked away. That was the last time I saw her. Over the next few weeks, things continued unraveling for her. Jake was still missing. Her finances were wrecked, and the lies she told about me, they started falling apart. People began to distance themselves. They saw the truth. And looking back, I don't regret a single thing. Not breaking up, not canceling the wedding, not choosing my kids over Sarah's chaos. It was a hard lesson, but one I'll never forget. The people you let into your life should add to it, not take from it. Not drain you. Not twist your priorities to fit their agenda. If protecting your kids means shutting the door on someone who disrespects your boundaries, shut it, lock it, throw away the key. My kids come first. Always.